A little boy wandered into the women's locker room at the health club, and as he appeared was greeted by shrieks and screeches by the women there. "What's wrong?" the boy asked. "Haven't you ever seen a little boy before?" There are moments I simply don't understand. Things that folks regard as scandalous or controversial or threatening or dangerous that seem harmless to me. A little boy wandering into a girl's locker room, driving while black, traveling while Muslim, working while Mexican, questioning while young, healing on the Sabbath. How about those folks who continue to whisper that homosexuality is what caused the fall of the Roman Empire and gay marriage will lead to the fall of the American Empire as well? Some of those whispers are more stage whispers, emanating from megachurch pulpits and so-called Christian broadcasting networks. The UCC put out a rainbow-colored, wonderfully succinct bumper sticker stating, "It's just love." I mean, what's so bad about that? To love while gay. The scribes and Pharisees of the modern age want to tell us what bathrooms to use, what color to be, what neighborhoods to drive in, what religious clothing accessories are acceptable, what country to be from, which gender is appropriate for our chosen profession. I mean, what's so bad about any of those things? Don't they all seem harmless enough? Not controversial, not divisive, not dangerous. I mean, haven't you ever seen a human being before? We're all pretty darn specific: color, sexual identity, citizenship, shape and size, faith and aspiration. Can't we just accept one another without judgment about such basic, harmless facts about us? I mean, what's so bad about us? Do you remember the speech that Shakespeare puts on the lips of Shylock in The Merchant of Venice as he struggles to understand the prejudice that he faces? "Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dementias, senses, affections, passions? Fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die?" I mean, what's so bad about being a Jew? I can imagine that the same sense of perplexed outrage experienced by Shylock is experienced by all of us when we come under suspicion or attack for simply being who we are, doing the harmless things that we mostly do in our lives. And I can imagine that same sense of perplexed outrage was also felt by Jesus in our gospel reading this morning. Jesus' disciples, seemingly with his permission, ate some grain from a field on the Sabbath, and then Jesus heals a crippled man on another Sabbath, and on both occasions, Jesus' behavior is regarded as scandalous. It comes under attack for eating some grain, for healing an infirm man. I mean, what's so bad about that? Where is this behavior coming from, this human overreaction to the harmless other, to behavior that is not violent or threatening or scandalous or even controversial, but is simply human? I mean, isn't it a sin the way that the scribes and Pharisees react to Jesus? Isn't it a sin when we too have those kinds of overreactions? Why do we do that? Where does this sin come from? Juan Luis Segundo tells us that the greatest and most frequent human sin is taking the path of least resistance. Taking the path of least resistance. We often put it another way, getting along by going along, right? We will go along with the crowd simply because it's easier. We face less resistance. It makes smaller demands on us. So think of that moment in the late 70s when we all watched as a young and awkward Mary Richards, fictional executive producer of the news in a small Minneapolis station, asked her boss, Lou Grant, if she was better than the man who preceded her in the job. Oh yeah, he was terrible, Lou told her. Then why, Mary asked him, do I make $50 a week less than he did? Now, none of us thought of Lou Grant as a particularly evil man. In fact, he had great fatherly instincts towards this woman who was going to make it on her own in Minneapolis on the old television show. But he was going along with a larger system, wasn't he? Guided by the notion that somehow men's work was more important than women's. And notice something else. When Mary Tyler Moore asked the hard question nearly 40 years ago, it was received with smiles and laughter. Isn't she cute? Isn't that adorable? But when the same question is asked today and given a legislative name, equal pay for equal work, it's somehow divisive, scandalous, controversial, dangerous. I mean, what's so bad about wanting fairness? Haven't we ever seen a woman work before? Again and again, we see the Lou Grants of the world, basically good people, caught up in going along with bad systems. I can only imagine that was the case with some of those scribes and Pharisees who so objected to Jesus as he healed on the Sabbath. They weren't particularly evil people. They were simply following the rules, going along with the powers that be, getting along by going along. But taking the path of least resistance is not the only sin in evidence here. It seems to me there's another layer of sin in some of those scribes and Pharisees then and now, and that's the sin of willful ignorance. One of my mentors, Jim Nelson, an important and world-renowned Christian ethicist, was flying on an airplane years ago, struck up a conversation with the man next to him. "What do you do?" the man asked Jim. "I'm a professor of Christian ethics." "Oh," the man said, "isn't that just do unto others?" "And what do you do?" Jim asked his traveling companion. "I'm an astronomer," he said. "Oh," Jim said, "isn't that just twinkle, twinkle, little star?" I can only imagine that that astronomer didn't appreciate having his ignorance mirrored back at him. But willful ignorance takes it to a different level. We don't know, and we don't want to know. We don't want our simplistic understanding ruined by knowledge. Our carefully confined intellectual horizons opened up by a larger reality. For instance, how about those who continue to uphold discrimination on gender based on what they call God's order of creation? So, I'm in Florida recently, Dee and I. We go on the dolphin tour. Did you know that a porpoise is not a dolphin? A porpoise is a whale. A whale. And an orca is not a whale. An orca is a dolphin. Did you know that? So, here's the bottlenose dolphin, a creature on God's own created planet with a larger brain than humans and a ratio of brain size to body mass second only to humans. By and large, female dolphins raise the young, do so in pods, in communities of mothers and babies and aunts. Males are not monogamous, but they will mate with different partners, and they form a lifelong partnership with one other male. By and large, if you see two adult dolphins swimming together, they are bonded males. So what does that tell us about God's order of creation and how it pertains to gender role? Or look at the animal world where it's female lions, not male lions, who bring home the bacon, or the zebra or wapiti or whatever. Or look at the bird world where nearly 10% of all birds don't have offspring, but instead help raise other birds' kids. And did you know that 1/3 of all the albatross pairs on Oahu are of the same gender? Or how about humans, where since the Kinsey report some 70 years ago, the percentage of LGBTQ people in the American population seems fairly constant. Even as attitudes have changed to be more accepting, that hasn't changed the percentage of folks who identify as other than heterosexual. Yet there are still those who want to hammer home a simplistic notion of gender identity and call it God's created order. In fact, they are willfully ignorant of God's created order. They will close their eyes and their minds to anything that challenges their simplistic understanding. We don't want our understanding ruined by fact, our carefully confined intellectual horizons opened up by reality. That's willful ignorance. Or how about this? We construct a travel ban and justify it by citing specific terror attacks while keeping ourselves willfully ignorant of the fact that such a ban would not have stopped those attackers, those terrorists. That's willful ignorance. And doesn't Jesus expose it completely when he has the crippled man stand before him and asks those assembled, is it lawful to do good or to do harm? To save life or to destroy it? Only the willfully ignorant would ignore what's plain before their eyes, the reality of God's goodness and healing, or at least Jesus' harmlessness. Only those who take the path of least resistance are those who are willfully ignorant. And one more as well. One more deeper and descending level of sin and sinner, those who will do anything to hold on to their power. That's who really feels threatened by Jesus in the Sabbath healing. And notice in our passage, we haven't even gotten to the real powers of Jesus' time. The Roman Emperor Augustus, the provincial governor Pilate, the quisling King Herod of Judah. No, we'll get to them later, but right now we're dealing with those petty little men, the scribes and Pharisees and their like, who hold power in small places, in synagogues and temples, in churches and schoolyards, in classrooms and families, in school boards, business boardrooms, in town councils, government bureaucracies. We're talking about the petty little women and men who feel threatened when a rule is broken, not because of how it affects others, but because it threatens them. It threatens their power, their grasping little hands' control over their small corner of the world. Haven't we seen them? Don't we see them all the time as we're out in the world, shouting orders with red faces, acting like tyrants, making us fill out additional forms, follow more rules, in restaurants and stores, during family gatherings and school events, at the DMV, in the post office, at the supermarket, even at the mall kiosk, and we say to ourselves, thank God I don't work for him. Thank God I'm not married to her. Thank God I don't have to deal with that guy every day. Thank God I wasn't raised by that lady. And their fear and malice and spite, even if it's not ours, is magnified through our inaction and lack of resistance, by our willful ignorance, into the kind of evil monstrosity that can ruin lives, betray best intentions, destroy communities, that can nail a Savior up onto a cross. That's the sin that this passage is warning us about this morning. And you may or may not be one of those powerful little women or men trying to hold on to their power, but I am sure that each one of us has been part of the willfully ignorant or the silent many who allow the powerful few to sow seeds of fear and hatred, greed and oppression. It's to us that Jesus comes this Sabbath day. It's to our crippled and frightened spirits that Jesus offers healing and strength. It's to our crooked souls that Jesus offers the straightening clarity of God's goodness and grace. And isn't that what the Sabbath day is all about anyway? So, today Jesus offers us a call to repentance, a call to loosen our hold on our own little power and reach out to embrace God's greater power of healing and goodness and grace. It's a call to give up our willful ignorance, setting aside our simplistic understandings, opening our eyes to the real diversity, complexity, and beauty of what God has made to us and of us. It's a call to stop getting along by going along and to man up, to woman up, to be willing to say no when others say yes, to resist peer pressure, to stand up in a crowd, as the Roman poet Horace wrote a few years before Jesus' birth, "One man with courage makes a majority." That's the courage that Jesus calls us to show, to turn away from our cowardice and fear, our greed and grasping, and bravely follow him on the path to a new kingdom, a new order of love and justice, of the peace of heaven coming to earth. And what's so bad about that?